Thanks. And thanks, Deputy Funchion and Sherlock and Cairns and others for their comments and contributions. I just want to respond briefly to something Deputy Healy-Rae said, just for clarity. Of course there were decent people, many decent people in the church and in the state. But there was a system. There was a system, and it was official. It was orchestrated. It was systematic. It was approved and endorsed at the highest level of the state for most of the history of the state, and at the highest level of the church. So yes, there may have been individuals who were appalled, individuals who tried to do their best, and so on. Of course there were. But this was the system of the state and the church. And every single mother and child who had their identity taken off them, child who was torn out of his mother's arms, mother who had her child torn out of her arms, every single one of them are the victims of abuse by church and state. Every single one. And the idea that you can exclude them, of course, beyond that, some people suffered much worse, but it had nothing to do with an arbitrary date of 6 months. It certainly often had something to do with being boarded out. It certainly often had something to do with being discriminated on the grounds of colour or class, but it had nothing to do with arbitrary dates of a week, a month, 6 months, or whatever. Nothing. And there is no basis for these exclusions. The exclusion of institutions, for the failure to acknowledge particular suffering, or for arbitrary dates. And it is shocking, quite honestly, that the Minister still will not respond to that central point. There is no justification. I did psychology in university as one of my subjects. And there are many schools of psychology, but there is not one serious school of psychology who believes that there is a blank slate for the first 6 months. And that things that happen to you from day one aren't impacting on a lifelong basis. And if you are traumatised, if something is done wrong to you, such as being separated, mother and children being separated at that age, that has a lifelong imprint on you, you have been wronged. And the state must acknowledge that, and it is failing to do it. And the Minister won't even do the survivors the decency of explaining how you possibly came to that, but maybe it's, of course, because there is no explanation. It's an accountant's decision, and that is compounding the abuse and the suffering and the injustice that were done to so many.